bracket to actually be the last slot, by the way, to make it into this lobby, and are still within the top 6.
By 1 point.
Actually insane. Okay. While we take our breath, I want to hear some thoughts from Rainer, because Elevate are making a comeback story of a lifetime.
I'm not going to steal his thunder, but some would say levels as Elevate rise up to the occasion in more ways than one. Not just for the moment, with the crowd, with the lights in this arena, but with the game. One of the biggest LAN games we have ever seen, especially in a match point finals. We'll check if that broke a record. It certainly could have been the biggest jump we've seen, from 0 to 30 points in one game from Elevate. Rain Day, Glitter Explosion, DS, Spider Tiff on the desk to break it down. Guys, we've seen so much happen, but it is starting to get tense. Still 2 teams on match point, and that hasn't changed even after all the fireworks.
Yeah, and I think those 3 teams that just barely missed out on it by 1 and 2 points respectively have to be in physical pain, because they were all literally in scenarios where they were trying to get one more kill here just to ensure that, and they could not close it out. And when it's DZ and Reject Winity on match point with how they've been playing, it could end in the next match.
I'm not surprised. I don't think anyone is that Dark Zero is on match point at this point. They've been dominant in getting great scores throughout these games, but they haven't got a win yet. Reject Winity, though, they have, and they are the first APAC North team to be on match point since year 2 when Fnatic was on match point. So this is a huge run from Reject Winity. What they're doing right now, it's relatively unprecedented.
It certainly is, and wildly enough, well, it's unprecedented on the international stage. We're going to look back at this split and say that we absolutely saw it coming with the statistics that they were able to put up regionally, and then with their performance in group stages. It's hard to say that we're underestimating Reject Winity when we've clearly been singing their praises throughout all of Split 1 playoffs so far. What I think is still surprising and really surreal to most people is that Dark Zero, for the longest time, we talked about it yesterday, have felt like gods, and now we're seeing that realistically the playing stage between them and Reject Winity is actually relatively even.
And 2 different styles, Tiff, right? As we look back at round number 4, which is coming up in just a moment. Walk us through how these styles are blending against each other and also having an impact for both teams. It's not like one is winning out. We're seeing almost a tug of war between what is going to be successful. And while Not Moist got their first win in game number 4, there was still so much from all these different regions to talk about.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. And I think a lot of this is going to allude to exactly what Glitter said when she was opening this up. Can those gods bleed? And would Elevate be the one to find the success? A massive game, but you turn your tides back to match number 4, back to World's Edge. We're Not Moist. A lot of people here in the crowd are expecting big things out of them, and it's just another day in the office. Already sitting on about 7 eliminations here, and the way that they're approaching this, Walty doing a really good job of holding these angles, forcing those enemies around. But when you just hold high ground and then you completely swarm around them, this is where Effect was staring down the barrels at Dark Zero and going massive. And all Not Moist had to do was third party and clean it up.
And what a story. Not Moist barely getting their visas, getting entry into the country, and then doing this. I'm sure that the crew is proud. Match 5, though, would see DSG, who've got a lot of fan representation in the building, show up big time.
Likely one of my most exciting games of the tournament, because it's also when we saw Reject Winity hit match point at the same time as DSG and Reject Winity played this end game really well. This was another one of those situations where the last 3v3 did come down to execution. One of my favorite parts of it was seeing the way that Reject Winity were also willing to play around a Wraith, and you can tell that they've clearly got experience in APAC North, where the meta is a lot more flexible than in other regions, because they actually have the presence of mind to turn DSG's cooldowns against them, use the Wraith portal to disengage, and while it ultimately comes down to an insane 1v1, the actual winners of it was really the audience, because this crowd lost their minds at a DSG win.
I would almost say an insane decision for Design to try to go for the no-scope charge Sentinel shot instead of just reloading the Havoc, man. But he was feeling it. They felt good about it. A team that felt good about their chances was Reject Winity. They were so close to closing it out in this last game, but a perilous fight with Fnatic, and of course before then, to close out Effect on Alliance, ended up changing the course of their history, maybe the history of this tournament. Lauren, what do we think about this play here? Is part of it just how they're getting to this point, so don't stop it, or should they have been a little bit more patient now that these things can cost them the tournament?
And I think that's really what they're going to be asking themselves in this situation. Was it the right choice to make? Now, originally, they had to make that choice twice, right? They had one spot where they get really low and they try to make a move in. They decide to disengage, play it a little bit smarter, and they keep going back in with those aggressive moments. And when you're going up against a squad like Fnatic, with the way we've been seeing them play, it's a little bit rough. But then moving forward to this final circle, we thought Aurora was one of those last three teams that was going to be able to get on this match point. They start taking damage that they weren't really looking to get involved in. I think they were hoping the other teams around would try and go back and forth with each other and they could maybe avoid it. When it's down to just Oirain, he actually does a decent job of at least avoiding a lot of the chaos, but everybody knew where he was when he moves behind this rock to try and get this battery off. Still alive, still wrapping around.
And this was a really, of course, critical game for a lot of teams that were near match point. You talked about Moist a little bit earlier. What stands out to me and a lot of the audience, of course, is E8. In this series, both a cautionary tale and an inspirational one. Of course, having 0 points coming into this game, they're really showing the devastation of taking a contest on match point, and at the same time, a 30-point game is incredible.
Insane, Tim.
I mean, look, I know Clara's out there somewhere in the crowd. Just
Yeah,
she's losing it right now. 30 points is, well, quite frankly, almost unprecedented, because you thought we got a crazy one in groups, but for a finals, a match point finals lobby, to drop almost a third of the lobby is insane. Shubi, Zap, and Zach, man, they are top tier.
All I got to say is I don't think they're going to be losing any tiebreakers in this one.
No. We just got to get them there.
I think that they're going to win the tiebreaker for biggest game. By the way, if you are tied in points, it is your largest game that would separate you from the team you are tied with. So I think that they will be okay. But the story of Elevate is even more interesting. A team that we knew not necessarily having a chip on the shoulder. That's more Dark Zero coming in after 8 months, not even making finals after winning 2 lands and being touted as the best next to TSM. But it's more of a story of, I wouldn't say being forgotten, but it's close. Zach Mazur's been such a strong pro from us, but hasn't gotten to this level in recent memory, maybe at all, with this team supporting him. And so when you look at Elevate, it's really a story of, wow, we're watching a player who is blooming into their own, and it's exciting to see, and it feels like the energy is here in the building supporting them.
When you think about Zach, you're certainly putting him up there with IGLs that have the history, the likes of, although he was in a different region at the time, Zero, Sweet has been around the block quite a few times, and yet he's very infrequently lumped into that category. I think a big question and a lot of doubt was on people's minds coming into this season because he had to reorganize a whole roster, and he hadn't quite reached the heights that people like Sweet and Hal had in the past. We're so used to seeing IGLs who, after a while, do end up perhaps looking for a team, constructing one, and then ultimately falling out because they can't quite get things right. It had already happened to Zach last split. To see him come back, you can tell he is not a quitter, and neither are his teammates.
And look at this board right here. 3 teams are less than 2 points away from landing on match point and joining Reject Winity and Dark Zero to have a chance to end this tournament. LG very close behind, a huge run from them from the elimination bracket yesterday. We'll see if they can pull it off, but big shout outs to Virtus Pro, Omen, and Serenity, teams that many people did not have being on the left side of this bracket all tournament, still showing up. Again, it has to be mentioned, TSM in 18th place, 19 total points. Alliance, 33 points. It may look like they're in 13th, but they're still having strong performances. It's just the bottom 5. We're wondering where they are. We know where 07 has been with that contest earlier. It's all unfolding here. Still 2 teams on match point, which means if Dark Zero and Reject Winity do not win next game, we will go again. But for now, let's go down to Stella.
Hey, y'all, I have the best section. Look at all these beautiful signs. But I do want to point out one special fan. Now, I want her to introduce herself. So if you could tell her to tell us where she's from and what her name is.
My name is Lina, and I'm from Japan.
Now, we can see on your sign that you have almost almost all the teams here. Can you explain to us who exactly you're rooting for?
皆さんいろんなチームが載ってますが、どのチームを特に応援していますか？
ふなっち、キノトロ、and Reject, and DSG, and Legend Gaming.
So she kind of loves everyone here, which is great. Now, I've heard that you have been coming here way before doors open and you're the last person to leave. Is that true, and why?
最初から最後まで来てらっしゃいますけど、それ本当の話ですか？最初から最後まで会場にいらっしゃいますけど、それ本当の話ですか？
Right.
All right, now who do you think is going to win? I mean, we are so close to having so many teams at match point. Who do you think is going to win?
今年の ALGS スピッツワンペイオフ、誰が優勝すると思いますか？
I don't know. Because everybody very strong.
I love that. You're absolutely right. Everyone here at ALGS is so strong. Vicky, Gino, please take us into the action.
Thank you so much, Stella. To watch everybody win, I mean, that would be fantastic to see the emotion behind it, but only one team could come out on top, and we only have two teams currently sitting at match point one. Potentially their Legend Cup could be identified. We're going to have to see.
Yeah, with Reject running the Watson here, as we pointed out, one of the only teams picking that right. And obviously, it's a legend that stands out. You put the fences, you can see them from miles away. As soon as a team sees any Watson team, they are going to make a beeline for that. It's always in the back of their head, okay, we know Reject's on match point. We need to be watching for them.
That's not the only thing that teams could use to identify them as well. I mean, Dark Zero also being at match point, the infamous Bangalore skin that we've seen too as well, Gino.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most notable out there. The
Catalina, I believe it was.
Yes, it was. That's the Bangalore skin that Zero uses, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to keep my eyes open. Obviously, when you start getting to match point, you need to start changing up your skins, right? You don't want to be identified by that. It's hard to get away from it with the legends like with Reject, but you can do it for the skins. And it's a little bit harder, it's a little bit easier for Dark Zero to blend into the crowd because so many teams are playing Bang Blood Watson. Bang Blood Caustic.
Right, that's Reject Winity. But as we do make that transition onto World's Edge, I would like to highlight that DZ is such a strong team in this tournament that they have a 50-50 win rate on both Stormpoint and World's Edge. Neither map has had one sway over the other for this team, whereas what we've seen so far from Rejects, they're much stronger on Stormpoint versus World's Edge. Literally 71% win rate on Stormpoint versus their 29% win rate on World's Edge.
Yeah, meanwhile, a team like Elevate there, they would have actually just pumped the stats a bit further up because they were struggling on Stormpoint. And of course, we just bring this up because as we move between the two maps, it does make a big difference in terms of which teams have a chance to take it out, where the zone pulls, and therefore, who has a chance to walk away with it? Because of course, there's only still two teams who could do that right now. This game, Reject Winity and Dark Zero.
Or are five other squads gonna meet them at match point? Fnatic 1 point away, Moist and Aurora tied for 2 points away. Or can LG sneak up there? We're gonna have to see, as our squads are gonna be able to be a little quiet this time around on World's Edge.
They are no early contests here. Now it's what we've come to expect, I suppose. Elevate just gets Survey Cam. Kinotrope taking over Epicenter. Alliance dropping all the way down in Dome. Kind of crazy, actually, to think that they're giving that up. They're giving Thermal Station up to Disguise. I mean, if you just go back a year, Vicky, these guys were going at it tooth and nail every time over at Thermal.
Just rotating around here. I mean, Disguise gets thermal. Next time we see World's Edge, Alliance move over to Dome, but at least they will have that survey beacon to work off of.
Oh, this is I like this circle because as you look around and you see Dark Zero and Reject, it's roughly the same distance away for both of them. So, I don't know. I think someone up there is being fair with this one.
These circles going all the way, once again, to the northeast. Getting some deja vu.
Bloodhound up to 100% pick rate now. Be gone, rats. It's going to be very tough to make it as a solo in this lobby.
Makes sense when your entire vision's clouded with these caustic gas traps, the Nox grenade, the smoke bang grenades coming in. But other teams now in the vicinity as LG rotate around Landslide. It is Serenity that have made an appearance. Legends Gaming want no business right now. They were around the tunnel of Landslide, have already rotated and called in the evac tower, while Serenity have the hype over LG.
Yeah, and with how it works at the moment, you really do get that information so often at Landslide, which very much helps Legends Gaming. That said, they're only at 30 points. 15th spot at the moment. A long way to go. Sitting alongside them is Serenity on 36, who were doing better at the start of this, but have slipped down into 10th now.
We have teams like E8 in the last game farming the lobby. It's going to be difficult to share a little bit of those crumbs. Evac tower called in for Moist. Two Rats, one controller are going to be looting and rotating away from Big Mod.
Watching the rotate here from Not Moist, they've won so many fans since their stint as Team Burger. They take the evac here over to R1C.
The Burger Brigade, I remember those days. Not Moist, prioritizing their rotation though. Getting ahead of two Rats, one controller.
Well, the really heartening thing about Not Moist, I think why they've garnered so many fans in that time, Vicky, is they really are one of the teams that everyone has seen as the challengers to the throne, to be able to take it away from Dark Zero or TSM. Sure, there's a couple of other teams that are ahead of them for the moment. Reject and Fnatic, of course, at the top of those, but
very doable though. 48 points, Reject Winity. You can see the pings coming in too. I mean, with this composition, very similar to the Caustic, with the Watsons, you could deny more space away from these teams trying to force their way into these buildings. TSM, by the edge here. They love this rotate, by the way, from this back end of Overlook, which is fantastic too. With more of these squads going to be rotating from that west side, but the teams that you have to look at, the